Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from First Aid Kit, called Ruins. Can you believe it's been 4 years since the last First Aid Kit album? Can you believe it's been a decade since they first gained a little bit of virality here on YouTube with that Fleet Foxes cover, before becoming the sort of folk act that can move a truly surprising number of units? Seriously, the fact that Stay Gold, their last album, moved around 200,000 copies in 2014, that kind of blows my mind. And part of it is that First Aid Kit don't really seem to attract a huge amount of buzz in the indie crowd or otherwise. They're not really a silent majority act, they're not really blowing your mind, but building real groundswell as they've expanded their sound. And you know, to be fair, it's not like the sisters duo went away. Throughout the past couple of years, they've been releasing covers and tributes and singles and really touring extensively, bringing on another new drummer and even a keyboardist and trombone player for their backing band last year. Now, this didn't really surprise me all that much. Given the sounds that are becoming more prevalent in modern folk and alternative country, this could be a pretty interesting, if expected, expansion, especially if they played more country tones. Now, what definitely caught more of my interest was a change in producers this time around, swapping out Mike Mogus for Tucker Martine, who's worked with everybody from the Decemberists to Modest Mouse to Spoon to REM, to even that Caseline Bears project that was underrated by entirely too many people back in 2016 made my year-end list. So okay, with a veteran further guiding the sound coming off of Stay Gold, which going back to it now is really just as great as it was 4 years ago, I had some high hopes for this. So, did Ruin live up to my expectations? Honestly, I wish it did more. Now don't get me wrong, Ruins is not a bad project, and it certainly shows the duo expanding their tones and sounds into territory that I do like. But I'm not really convinced that for what this record is targeting, it sticks the landing as well as it could. And what's exasperating is that the core fundamentals for First Aid Kit are so damn strong that even if there were little things that hold this album back from greatness, and there unfortunately are, they will be ignored overall by a lot of the fans, which could definitely be worrisome down the line. I'd rather call them out now and lead to a much greater project down the road than to see these fester. But for a change in pace, we're going to start off with the content, where in comparison to previous First Aid Kit records, the thematic art feels a lot more focused and arguably straightforward. It's a breakup album, partially inspired by Clara Soderbergh's very real-life experience a few years back. But First Aid Kit's approach to breakups, at least in the writing, is decidedly different than most. Still yearning and very earnest, almost at the point where the drama tilts it more into melodrama, but with a much more practical, mature focus overall. There's a refreshing amount of bluntness to a song like Fireworks, where it's outright admitted they saw this coming down the line, and it's kind of exasperating for them. Or on a song like Postcards, where they genuinely wish it could have worked out with this guy, but it didn't, and they still want to wish him all the best. They still kind of care for him. Now, some already said this is indicative of fatalistic thinking, with the presumption that the relationship would fail coming most of the forefront on Rebel Heart, but I'd argue it's simply a little bit more pragmatic, actively and acutely aware of the flaws in the relationship and why it was destined to end. That happens, that they had that foresight. Of course, and the follow-up question is that why they held out for so long if they knew it was going to end, and on songs like My Wild Sweet Love and Distant Star, that's answered too. They were trying to hold something together regardless, enjoying it as long as they could before it had to fade, effectively divorcing themselves from some of the guilt of ending it the way they did, try to make it while it lasts. Now, it still sucks, sure, because they're now lonely and aggrieved that so much time was almost wasted, but yeah, it could have been worthwhile time, right? Well, this is when a spanner's thrown in the works, foreshadowed on Rebel Heart, but coming right to the forefront on Hem of Her Dress, when the guy in question has moved on, seemingly without introspection, and the complicated emotions come rushing to the forefront. First, the angry deflection before the more reflective melancholy of the song Nothing Has to Be True, the closing track, where she contemplates her decisions driven more off of emotion and what she's told herself to justify those decisions, and that none of those things she said had to be true, because when you're seeking that loving connection, we're all the more willing to believe that inner voice is going to tell us that it's going to work. So yeah, solid as hell theme, very reminiscent of Lydia Lovelace's 2016 album Real, and I intend that as a compliment. It's an examination of emotional maturity and complicated relationships and these sort of breakups. Maybe a shade lacking in more direct detail, but you'd expect that coming in from First Aid Kit, coming off of Stay Gold, so why is this not clicking for me more? Well, I think it comes in the execution. So let's start off with tone. I really do love the harmonic arrangements between Joanna and Clara Soderbergh. It's the foundation point of the duo, and they've got a ton of natural chemistry. It's the reason why anybody likes these girls, but I can't be the only one who finds this sort of breakup record might resonate a little bit more if it focuses focus more on the solos for one or both of them, if only to cultivate a more intimate picture, but that also ties into the overall mood and atmosphere of the album. There's something so electric about these harmonies that you almost forget you're listening to a record about this sort of heartbreak, even with semi-detached millennial maturity, and that did throw me off a little bit when you're digging into the more melancholic content. Now, what threw me off significantly more was the overall instrumental tone that was chosen, which pivoted more towards alternative country with the usage of 3/4 bass progressions and pedal steel and organ and even hints of horns, all the more common in the modern indie scene. I might have expected it, but the integration did kind of throw me a little. And make no mistake, I don't have any problems with First Aid Kit getting more rootsy. They were going to eventually hit diminishing returns with their big reverb swollen songs on records like Stay Gold. This is a good pivot for them long term, but with that pivot comes an expectation the lyrics might pick up a little bit more detail. That's what you would expect in country. Or for a breakup album, they embrace slightly more subtle, more melancholic vibes. Again, I love the hook driving It's a Shame with the weedy organ and the pedal steel, or the old-fashioned waltz cadence, the fast-picked Spanish flourishes on Fireworks, the more bare bones to Live a Life that gradually builds some gorgeous arranged foundation, and of course the deeper, more wistful tones that make Nothing Has to Be True. I really do love that song. But on tracks like the jaunty Postcard or the big crowd sing-along ending of Hem of Her Dress, they feel a little bit too broad in their execution to fit with the more emotional nuance they're trying to bring. And then you get the feeling that this record is a shade too placid and light to really engage with the darker, more complicated grief beneath the pretty harmonies and the gentle, liquid swells of guitar melody. On top of that, for as much as I like Tucker Martine's work in his production, his acoustic pickups were a shade too thin and brittle right at the front of the mix, and I do wish that he'd step back and let the duo deliver a little bit more with less. On songs like Distant Star, they feel a tad overproduced, and that abrupt ending in that song in particular, it does hurt it. But as a whole, I think Ruins will hold as a transitional record for First Aid Kit, both in the content and the sound, and processing a breakup and a pivot towards something that's a little bit more organic, a little bit more of an earthy foundation in comparison with the misty layers of Stay Gold. And you know what? That's all a good thing. There's emotional maturity and some beautiful harmonies and genuinely good tunes here. But you know what? I gotta be honest, it's not all coming together as well as it could as they iron out the kinks. And it feels a shade too safe and placid to really dig deeper, which means I would probably say it's a slight step down from Stay Gold, which felt a little simpler but leaned into it effectively. And as such, I'm giving this a very strong 7 out of 10. Definitely a recommendation if you're a fan of this brand of rootsy folk and alternative country, but I would temper your expectations a little bit. I think Stay Gold is a shade better. Definitely really damn good, and I predict the next album will be even stronger as they settle into this sound and groove, but they do need to get there first, and really, I'm looking forward to it when they do. Check this out regardless. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Not a lot to say about this one. It's pretty damn good. You're gonna want to check it out. Links in the description below. And I got the poll up there for all you die-hard First Aid Kit fans. If you exist, I think you might. But yay, the poll's up there. You can tell me how wrong I am. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to support this channel or get involved in my scheduling process, the link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule, and there is a lot there right now. Thanks for keeping me busy. But if you guys actually want to see what's on that schedule, link to my Instagram is right down there below. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.